Collaboration and community. So what a great topic, truly. And Kristine Woolsey is the perfect person to start this conversation. She is an aggregator of psychology, anthropology, sociology, and behavior research. Plus, she's an architect and has an MBA, so she's a business person as well. All this built into one person. And one of the quotes, and you probably read this in the flyer that came out on Worktech that I really loved, was, "Community is a stunningly powerful tool for attracting the best and the brightest." So without further ado, let's jump into why community happens and how it can be deliberately designed into the workplace.
Good morning. So I get to go first, which means we test the mic and the PowerPoint on me. So how are we doing? Everybody can hear me? Great. All right, well, we're going to start this morning by talking about community, what it is and how to create it. My area of expertise is actually figuring out how to align corporate culture with business strategy for better results, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But let's just start here, by defining community. This is the definition from the Oxford English Dictionary, and it's just fine. I personally prefer this one from Steve Fortier, who's a researcher and community consultant. Community is like pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. So I like that one a little bit better. So why? Like, why do we care about, I mean, it's all soft and fuzzy, but why do we care about creating community? Well, I want to put together two facts that will help to connect that for you. First off, Towers Watson is one of the largest global HR consulting companies in the world, and every other year they put out a workplace survey. In 2014, they surveyed 32,000 people from 26 different markets, and what they found was that less than half of employees were engaged in their work. Okay, that's very sad, but you know why it really matters? This is how engagement impacts the financial results for business. We are looking at when you have a highly engaged workforce, profit margins average 27.4%. If you have a low engaged workforce, profit margins average 9.9%. There is a significant financial advantage to having an engaged workforce. So we're going to combine that with some research. There's a bunch of different people, but specifically I'm going to talk about the research of a sociologist at Stanford, Robert Willer, who basically he did a number of studies that showed there was a very high correlation between someone having a sense of belonging to a particular community and their willingness to help, contribute, and be engaged in the outcome, right? So if we can create community, we can actually make sure that people are engaged, and therefore they're happier, attraction, retention goes up, and company profit goes up. So everybody wins. And that's why community matters, and that's why we're actually talking about it this morning. Now, really quickly, my name is Kristine Woolsey. I'm all over the internet as Kristine Woolsey, so the way that I know that you really know me and you're not a salesman is if you call me Christy. At KristyWoolsey.com is my Twitter handle, or at Kristy Woolsey is the Twitter handle. I grew up, my father was early involved in artificial intelligence. And because of his job, we moved 26 times. So my entire growing up years, I was constantly thrust into new communities and was observing those communities and those patterns. And then I would go home for family dinner and would be talking about artificial intelligence and what makes humans human. So even though I studied architecture and became an architect, my passion has always been behavior and community and how we relate to each other. So we're going to start this by looking at I want to break the idea of community down so that we can begin to understand how to create it. There were two researchers in 1986, McMillan and Chavez, who came up with a definition for the 4 components that you can use to create community. And that research, even though it was 1986, that research is still the basis for work that's being done today. So the first factor is membership. Who's in and who's out. Very important that we understand that. The second one is mutual dependency. I need the community and the community needs me. The third is reinforcement, that I get more of what I need when I participate in the community. And the fourth is shared experiences, that I have a shared history and a shared memory, and I anticipate and look forward to additional shared experiences. So before I get into what that means in terms of the physical environment, I want to just briefly mention that you can't accomplish everything with the physical environment, and one of the reasons that I have this kind of cross-disciplinary background is because really, in order to drive behavior, leadership has to set a purpose, but then we attack that through organizational structure, programs and amenities, and facilities. And when you can get all three of those working in the same direction, then you've really got the power to drive behavior. All right. So now we're going to go through these one at a time. Membership. So the idea of membership really involves helping people understand that they are members of a community. And the basic research that I like to look at for this, like where you start with membership, we understand ourselves membership as a member at a core level, in the alligator part of our brain, visually. That's how we understand that we are members. And there's some interesting work that's been done by Dr. Rebecca Bigler, who runs the UT Austin Center for Gender and Racial Bias Studies. And she did this research with preschoolers. And she went into a preschool classroom, and she put half the preschoolers in red shirts and half the preschoolers in blue shirts, and then she just let them play for a week, right? And nobody put them in teams or commented on the shirts, whatever. She came back after 3 weeks and interviewed them and said, oh, hi, so which is better, the red shirts or the blue shirts? Which is smarter? Who's meaner, right? And these children always identified their group because of their color shirt as being better, smarter, whatever, and the other group as being worse. So at the core, we're attracted visually. Now, how does that impact the physical environment? If your target hiring demographic is millennials, you're going to want to speak to their membership. If it's baby boomers, you will want to speak to their membership. And so, architects and designers, we have a particular style. CEOs have a style. Their wife has a style. We tend to go for a style based on other things, but you need to recognize that what it looks like will really speak to and enhance an idea of membership. And specifically, so this is a project I was involved in for Appointment Plus. They began as a startup. They grew significantly, but they still needed that startup vibe. And so we deliberately used random non-matching carpet tiles. This is the view from the lobby. So while I'm waiting in the lobby for my interview, I can see the ping pong table, the beanbag chair. I know that it's a startup, even though it's not really. But it's speaking to a startup membership, right? The other thing is this idea of leadership really has to begin to create a draw, right? They need to have a sense of purpose. And so one of the other things you can do in the physical environment is have some element of the object begin to speak to the purpose of that company. This is a project that we did for Helix Electrical, and it has this orange wall that literally runs through the space like a spark of electricity. And as it moves through the space, as people arrive to work, as customers come to the office, this spark reminds people of the purpose. And so that tends to drive membership. Now, that's all fine and well when you're in a smaller project. But what happens if you've got multiple employees in multiple buildings, multiple floors? How do you get them to feel a sense of membership, right? Well, for that, we're going to talk about functional inefficiency, which is a retail strategy. And I like to call it the milk in the back of the store syndrome, right? So what happens is that when you're in that kind of mode, what you've got to do is you've got to actually put amenities that are a little bit inconvenient. So we have different amenities in different buildings so that people actually have to go to those buildings to get what they need. And the challenge is that people will complain. And they will say, oh, God, facilities people, why can't you put the coffee near me, right? But it's the same complaining that I do when I go to the grocery store. Why do they always put the milk in the back of the store? But as a matter of fact, I think some grocery store could really have a winner on their hands if they sold that as being to my advantage. Because when I go to the back of the store, then I remember, oh my gosh, I also need peanut butter, right? So it's to my advantage. So as facilities people, we really have to sell the idea of functional inconvenience as being a benefit for the greater good, right? So then I also want to talk about the virtual world, because that's starting to come. And one of the ways that we're starting to have membership is by removing the sense of someone being virtual, right? And so this is Beam. I actually went to a conference where there were 2 people from Canada who forgot their passports, and when they got to the airport, they couldn't get on the plane. So they participated in the conference via one of the sponsors, who was Beam. And what Beam is, for those of you who haven't experienced this, is from your computer, you actually control this little robot. So it's kind of like a FaceTime or Skype call with a robotic base that you control. And what happened over the course of the conference is we'd be standing around having one of these hangouts with other people at the conference, and one of these Beam robots would roll up to us and would turn to you and talk, and then turn and talk. And by the end of the conference, we had forgotten that they were not physically there. And so there are these virtual ways. Now, the other kind of virtual, physical blur that I wanted to talk about is this project that Atlassian did. They have 2 buildings across the street from each other, and employees were not walking up to the crosswalk and walking over and coming back, right? They were like running across the street. They were worried they're going to get hit and sued. So they installed these portals, and for those of you who are video gamers, you'll recognize the slide on the right is from the video game portal, so you can see that the designer took this from it. But basically, these portals are sprinkled throughout the building. And so you might be pouring your coffee in the kitchen, and you're actually talking to somebody pouring their coffee in the kitchen of the building across the street. And so you get that kind of natural interaction without feeling like it's a video conference and we have to schedule it, we have to sign up. It's just a natural interaction. So that's the other. And then the last thing I want to talk about, membership in a totally virtual world. There are several different programs. This is one called Sococo. And in this program, basically what happens is you are in a virtual environment, and this is a created physical office, right? So my avatar goes to the office, and if I want to talk to the person who has the avatar in the next office, I just go knock on their door, or we go have a Google Hangout in the team room, right? And so there's this sense of membership because I've created a virtual physical environment. So that blurring of virtual and physical, I think, is quite interesting. All right, I've spent a lot of time talking about membership because that's the core, and I'm going to blow through the rest of it, so I have time for questions. The next thing is mutual dependency. And the way that we create mutual dependency in the physical environment, part of it is having people be aware of what other people are doing. This is actually the tech cave that we did at Qualcomm, and it has places for people to kind of take a break and do gaming or whatever, but there's also places right next to it with meetings, and so I'm walking past, I'm aware of what other departments are doing. So I become aware of, I depend on them, they depend on me. This is another mutual dependency. Through that glass door is the training sales center, sales group at PCA Skin. Through the wooden door on the left is the training room where those people are coming from training. And we put in between those, we put a shared break room. So when people come for training and they take a break, they step out and they're actually in the same break room as the people who work there. Everyone was horrified when we came up with this idea. Not going to work, oh my God, how am I going to talk to my girlfriend about my whatever? But it has worked beautifully. As the salespeople actually get to know the people that they're selling to, of course, sales are going up, there's a bond, there's a level of trust, and they begin to think of themselves as members of the same community. Reinforcement. This is, again, the idea when I participate more, I get more of what I need. This is actually a very small project. It was for a nonprofit called Experience Matters, and what they do, they're basically a matchmaker so that the retired CFO doesn't end up stuffing envelopes for the nonprofit when they really need a CFO. So they're a matchmaker between baby boomers and nonprofits. And what we did was we took the whole front half of the space and turned it into a coffee shop. So now the baby boomers that want to volunteer, they come in, they have a cup of coffee. The people that are matching the volunteers are more aware of them. So by participating in the space, by coming to this physical location, they get more of what they want, and the community gets more of what he wants. This is actually a graphics department for a large company that I work for, and they needed focused areas, and we ended up facing all the desks in the same direction so they wouldn't be distracted. You put your headphones on, you're all good. But all around the edge of the space, you can see there are these vision boards, and so when you find something that inspires you, you print it out, you go to the vision board, you stick it up, and when you put something up, you see everything everyone else has stuck up, and so you go back to your desk with more feedback. So that kind of idea of reinforcement. All right, shared experiences. Again, I'm just going to hop back to Appointment Plus. This is the view inside the lobby where they have their monthly Bob talk, but what's important in terms of those, a lot of times those shared experiences are more about the They're more about the funny stories, the inside joke. And you can see on top of this refrigerator is a stuffed gorilla. And that stuffed gorilla was actually won at something by one of their programmers when they were only 6 people. And you can see how that stuffed gorilla has actually worked its way into their logo. It has nothing to do with what they do, but it's kind of an inside joke. So that's that shared vision. It becomes very much a program and kind of talking about it, but it also gets picked up in the physical world. And then finally, in case you're like, yeah, but that's a small project, this is Sony's corporate headquarters in San Diego. And when you step off the elevator lobby, you are greeted with this picture of the founders of Sony. How humanizing is that? This is our inside joke. And so throughout the facility, we place these images and reminders that Sony is not a nameless, faceless corporation. We have a shared history, and we have a shared set of values, and environmental graphics play a big role in that. So that is my talk. So, launch. Consider yourself launched.
Fantastic. How about you? What questions have you got?
Christy, this is Jim Ware. I'm curious, when I think of community, one of the first things that occurs to me is common purpose, common interest, focus on something that is, now you mentioned mutual dependency, but I didn't see any other references to things like purpose or vision or goals, and I wonder if you could talk about that.
Well, so the reason that I didn't is because this is primarily a conference with people that are involved in the physical environment. Primarily, there are a few that are in other things, but what I was trying to allude to with my little diagram that has the shift lever and the 3 things, that shift lever is the leadership. And if you don't have a leader who's actually standing up and saying, this is where we're going, this is how we're going to get there, this is what I need from you, then none of the rest of it works. And that's purpose, and purpose is absolutely the foundation. So facilities can't get there by itself, but what happens is that when the leadership is clear in the purpose and facilities is actively working to support that vision, then you get some real power to it. So thank you for bringing that up.
Good question. Other questions? Yes. And please state your name also.
Hi, I'm Peter Miskwitz, JLL. Very interested in your thoughts on the digital-physical blur and the harmonization of our physical workplace experience and our digital experiences, and what are your thoughts on that as we move forward?
So I think, this is what I think, as I look into my crystal ball. I think that the biggest revolution that we are about to experience is a revolution in management. Because our real challenge in the workplace is that we have, I have a talk that I give called The Future of Work, and I go into corporations, and basically everybody over 50 in the room thinks I've lost my mind, and everybody under 30 thinks I'm incredibly boring because it's old hat, right? You know, so the idea that of managing by seeing you in the office is just going away. And we're going to have to learn to manage by outcome so that I just tell you, this is what I need delivered, and this is the day I need delivered, and this is how I'm going to measure you. And you go do it whenever, wherever you want. And I think that that is where that's really where we're going to start to see the virtual begin to seriously engage with the physical. I'm quite interested in programs like Sococo because, so the largest completely virtual company in the world right now is Automatic, which is the company that does WordPress, and they have about 265 employees all over the globe. And I'm watching them quite carefully, figuring out like how do we create a sense of membership and a company culture when we have people working in different global, different time zones, and they do get together on a regular basis. And interesting, when they get together, they don't get together to meet, they get together to play. Socialize. Because that's what bonds them, and then they go apart to work. So I think we're just going to see a lot of evolution of that and have more of those answers in a more clear, as the future unrolls.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Christy, there's another company you might try and track down that did exactly that. It was called MySQL. Sun bought them back in '06. We studied them. They had 300 employees, mostly software engineers, in 30 different countries and no physical environment. And now, of course, they're probably buried somewhere in Oracle, and it would be interesting to see what happened to them.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I'm aware of Maya. That was a very interesting collaborative group. Lots of different kinds of people.
Great. Any other questions? I've got one. Well, it gives you a chance to think about it. Is that, you know, we've got a lot of people in the design community here, people that are focused specifically on the space and space creation. Thinking about the social science aspect of it, what recommendations or what guidance do you have around how for them to begin to apply this?
So I think I would actually put out there, and this is for architects, designers, facilities managers, and even just people not in that, we as human beings, we like objects. We focus on objects. We understand objects. But the real power is in designing experience, right? So instead of being focused on, I need a conference room, I need a table, I need whatever I need, which is an object, if you can begin the process by talking about what experience you need or what behavior you need, and then worry secondarily about the objects that support that behavior. Now, I was trained as an architect. I am a licensed architect, even though I haven't worked in architecture in a while. We love beautiful objects, and I love looking at great objects, but it's not enough to be pretty. It really isn't. There are an awful lot of talented people in the world who can make really beautiful things, and it's almost at this point, if you Google design on the internet, you will very quickly come up with like billions of hits. And what's really important for me, it's the fact that it's beautiful has become a ticket to entry, right? So the roof doesn't leak, the toilet flushes, and it's beautiful. That's your ticket to entry. The question is, what else does it do for you? What else is the physical environment doing for your company and helping you to reach those business goals?
Great. Okay, so we've got time for one last question. Anything burning?
Good morning, Simon Elliott from Aramark and the LifeWorks Restaurant Group. So we believe that food, has formed the basis of community for, thousands of years. How do you see that food can contribute to the community in the workplace?
So I absolutely agree. So in that little diagram, and actually I put an insert in your packs which has the diagram on the back. What I talk about is you drive behavior with organizational structure, programs, amenities, and facilities. And food definitely falls into one of those critical programs. People come together around food more than anything else. And the real trick to food, it's exactly as I was describing the visual look. The question is, what is the food that your demographic is interested in? So that's the first question. And the second question is, in some ways, food causes conversation. So if I have a vending machine that I can go to and I can just grab a snack and leave, I have no excuse to hang out and kind of chat with you for a minute. But if we have a coffee machine, this is the functional inconvenience. If I've got a coffee machine that takes a minute to brew and I have to stand there and wait, or if I have a server that's going to serve me up and I have to stand and wait, then I'm highly likely to have a conversation with the person next to me. Right? And so in some ways, the design of what kind of food and how it's delivered can begin to help to create those connections that are so important in terms of making community happen.
Wonderful. If people want to learn more about some of the work, where would you suggest they go?
You can read more about me and what I do at KristineWoolsey.com. It's my whole name. And then you can follow me on Twitter. It's @KristiWoolsey.
Wonderful. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you.